This video was originally going to be about my book publishing process, which almost took 2 months to get the copyrights, format, and make the book ready for readers. But as I was filming this, I realized that perhaps that won't be the most interesting video, and that I would rather talk about a topic I often think about, and that is fantasy being perceived as less serious writing by the non-fantasy reading community, or even by many who consider themselves non-readers, who may not have time to read, and when they do have time, they'd rather spend it on any leisurely activity other than reading. I write mainly fantasy. I have other writing attempts in other genres that I'm not that proud of. And like many who grew an interest in writing, I started as a reader and a fan of other books. My family and friends are supportive, but I'm often told that I've chosen the hardest career. Because who has the time to read a book nowadays? A fantasy book. Aside from my enjoyment of turning thoughts into words and ideas into worlds, I think fantasy is more relevant than most people think. Believe it or not, fantasy can have the most serious discussions about realistic issues, but in a very nuanced way. And this is exactly why I love it so much. It can really shed light on reality without being too obvious. It stays a story above all, without turning too preachy. I understand, however, that many people don't have the time or the mental energy to read a fantasy and figure out all the nuances and hidden moral tones behind the story, especially if it's a 500+ page book. And also, let's consider that not all fantasy novels are meant to be that deep. And yet I can safely say that the conflict between good and evil, which is in the heart of every fantasy story, offers a lot of moments that we can contemplate. So the other question would be, if fantasy books are so important, why do I mainly discuss classic novels in my channel? And the answer is, it's not because fantasy is a less serious topic. It's because I think that classics are pretty much still worthy of our time today, and that there is a lot of things that we can learn from classics. I know that as a writer, there was a lot of things that I've learned about writing while reading the classics. I also believe that it's easier to get caught in useless debates over modern books than old ones. I may be wrong, of course, so I would love to know what you think about that. In my opinion, every idea, every criticism about classic literature was already discussed 100 times before. So any debate that might come up can only be an added value. Plus there is this other reason that makes me more likely to talk about classics in my channel, and that is the lesser risk of spoilers. Because most people have already read those books, or at least watched a movie or a drama about them. I also love their slow rhythm. At first I thought I could never learn to enjoy that slow pace, but then I felt it's a good break from our fast-paced modern life, where we constantly feel the need to be productive and up-to-date with everything happening. What I'm trying to say in this video is that there is no such thing as a genre of reading that can be greater or more serious than the other. Being someone who studied the English classics as a major in college, I know how the academics sometimes think of fantasy as a lesser than genre. As a student, I could hardly expect to study Lord of the Rings in the English literature department, even though it is the classic epic fantasy of all time. The purpose of novels should be first and foremost to entertain. I learned this in college, so I assume that most classics were so good because the entertainment factor was the main focus, even in those classics that are overloaded with commentaries about social issues. Fantasy can be our unusual window to reality. I don't necessarily encourage fantasy as an escape from reality, even though it's an expected outcome of any story written mainly for entertainment. And I also don't encourage overloading fantasy books with social and political issues. So reaching a balance between alluding to reality and steering completely clear from it is something that I try to achieve in my books. I believe my books are a mix of classics and epic fantasy, as it should, because our writing is usually a product of what we read. The book writing process to me is largely therapeutic. A lot of my thoughts are filtered through my characters and the events they go through. Write the thing that you would enjoy to read. I love this advice, and I think about it every time I'm starting to write a new book. Thank you to all my subscribers. I'm always looking forward to chat with you in the comments. Let me know your thoughts about this topic, and see you in the next video.